Hello guys, Dr. Shingo Mufawa here and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to talk about the human ear using a past paper that was written by grade 12s in November of 2018. It is Life Sciences paper 1 and we're going to look at question 2.4. As you can see here guys, the question says, study the diagram below. And when we are provided with a question with a diagram, we already know that the examiner is probably going to ask us to label parts that are represented by the given letters. Or the examiner will provide us with the functions and then ask us to match the functions with the letters or the names of the parts that are represented by the letters. So, before we dive into addressing this question, let us study the diagram. Now, part A is representing this structure. It is the auditory canal. Okay, so we're going to label it as the auditory canal. Let's use blue. So it is the auditory canal. Okay, then we move on to part B. Part B is actually representing this whole part. So it is representing the middle ear. Because it is including this part, the ossicles, as well as the oval window. So I'm taking it to be the middle ear, to be representing the whole section of the ear, that whole section of the ear that we refer to as the middle ear. Right, then part C is representing this structure, this funny structure of ours. Which looks like a snail, right? Which houses a receptor known as the organ of Corti, but it is known as the cochlea. Okay, right? Then we have part D. Part D is this whole structure. Which is the auditory nerve. So label it auditory nerve. Okay, then we come down. Part F. Part F is this one. Maybe let's use a maybe blue, which is a bit clear. Right, this is the part. That's part E. We're going to call it the round window. It is round in shape, so it is known as the round window. All right, then part E is representing this whole tube, and this whole tube is called the eustachian tube. So having done this, we can now address the question. But before we do so, we need to note that each question has got its own instructions. And as a candidate, you are required to understand the question. And my advice would be, highlight the key words for each question so that you are constantly reminded of what the examiner is expecting from you. And also highlight the mark allocation, because it also tells you how much information the examiner is expecting from you. So now, let us look at question 2.4.1. 2.4.1 is an easy question that is simply asking you for recall, right? recall of the functions of the given parts. So the question says, give. You are only giving one function. You are giving one function of the three parts that are given here. Part A, Part E, and Part F. And you are also supposed to take note of the mark allocation. Each question is 1 mark, so you are giving one function. Please note that if you are asked to give one thing, or like in this case, you've been asked to give one function, and then you decide to give 2 functions, you are only going to be credited for the first function. Even if it's wrong, the examiner will only consider the first one. The second one will not be considered even if it's correct. So make sure that you follow the instructions. So now let's answer question 2.4.1. Okay, so 2.4.1. 2.4.1 is asking for the function of A. A is the auditory canal. And the function of the auditory canal is to transmit sound waves to the tympanic membrane. It also has another function, which is to secrete earwax or cerumen. Right, so now let's answer it. So we're just going to write the answer there. We're not going to repeat the question. So we're going to say part A would be to transmit sound waves to the tympanic membrane. Okay, then part B is asking for one function of E. Right, we go back to our diagram. E is this part, and we called it the eustachian tube. And the function of the eustachian tube is to equalize pressure on either side of the tympanic membrane. And the tympanic membrane is this one. All right, so this eustachian tube is equalizing pressure on this side of the tympanic membrane and that side of the tympanic membrane. So we're going to say that the tympanic membrane equalizes pressure on either side of the tympanic membrane. The tympanic membrane is also called the eardrum, but I prefer that you use the term tympanic membrane. So we come to part C. All right, part C is asking for one function of part F, and we're just going to give one function. Right? So we're going to say that we're going to go back to our diagram. Part F, we identified it as this one, right, which is the round window. And the function of the round window is to release pressure from the inner ear. So here we're going to say that it releases pressure from the inner ear. From the inner ear. Okay, so that's our question 2.4.1. Now the next question that we're going to answer is question 2.4.2. 2. Okay, can I use a different color? Okay, let me just use the same color. All right, so 2.4.2, right, is also an easy question that is asking you to write down. It's asking you to write down only. Okay, let me use this color to write down. You're writing down only the letter of the part where sound is transmitted in form of pressure wave or electric impulse. All right, pressure wave in a liquid and an electric impulse. So to answer this question, right, you need to know the place where we experience pressure waves. Remember, the outer ear, we have sound waves. In the middle ear, we have vibrations, and the pressure waves are found in the inner ear, right? So the part that we are looking for should be in the inner ear. So this part where the sound is transmitted in form of pressure waves would be this part, which we labeled as C, which is the cochlea. So our examiner is asking us for the letter only. So we're going to answer this question by saying C. Right? Then we move on. So this is part A. Then we move on to part B. Right? Part B is also asking for a letter. Right? Also asking for a letter, but this time of a part where sound is transmitted as an electric impulse. All right, so the electric impulse is only transmitted by this part, which is D, our auditory nerve. But our question is asking us for the letter, so we're just gonna write the letter is D. Now, let's move on to question 2.4.3. Right, 2.4.3 is asking us to explain the effect of receptors. The effect if the receptor. We are explaining right, so we are explaining. Number one, we are explaining. Right, so we are explaining the effect if this word if the receptors in region C are damaged. What would be the effect if receptors in region C are damaged? That's what the question is asking, and it's for 3 marks. Already you can see that this is a moderately difficult question, which requires you to know the relationship between the receptor, right, and the impulse that will be generated by the receptor, and the hearing process. So it's about, maybe let's just write that down. It's about the relationship between the receptor So the relationship between, I'm just going to write it here, relationship between the receptor. We need to know the receptor. We need to know the function of this receptor. All right. So we need to know the relationship between the receptor, right? Impulses. My spellings. What's wrong with me? All right, impulse and the hearing that would take place. Right, so now to answer this question, number one, we need to know the receptor that is located in region C. And we also need to know the function of that receptor. All right? Then when we know the receptor, its function, and the receptor and its function, and we are told that now this receptor is damaged, it tells us that if this receptor is not functioning, is damaged, its function will not be there. Right. So if the receptor that is found in C, our organ of Corti, is damaged, it's not going to convert the stimulus, all right, from being a sound wave into an impulse. It's not going to do that. And if it doesn't do that, it means we're not going to have a nerve impulse that is going to be sent to the cerebrum of the brain. And therefore, the cerebrum will not have anything to interpret. Therefore, there won't be any hearing that will take place in that individual. All right. So let's write the answer down. So 2.4.3, we are saying that if C is damaged, the receptors are not going to be able, right? If C is damaged, the receptors cannot convert the stimuli into impulses. So the receptors cannot convert the stimuli is many, into impulses. So we're not gonna have any impulses, right? And if we don't have any impulses, it means no impulses are going to be transmitted to the cerebrum. So no impulses are transmitted to the cerebrum. Remember, we need to talk about the cerebrum here, not to just say brain. It's the cerebrum of the brain. And therefore, if no impulses are transmitted to the cerebrum, it means the person does not hear anything. So we're going to say, and the person does not hear anything. Does not hear anything. Or no hearing would take place. All right. So we move on to the next question. So the next question, we're going to do it on the next slide. All right, so we're now on question 2.4.4. Question 2.4 is asking us to describe how the parts of the middle ear. You remember we labeled this part B, is the middle ear. All right. The reason why I labeled it as the middle ear is that it is including this part, which is called the tympanic membrane, and it looks like it's also including this part, which is known as the oval window. So now question 2.4.4 is asking us to describe, all right, how parts of the middle ear, and it tells us exactly what it is referring to, including the membranes, right, assist with amplifying sounds. All right. Okay. So with this question is asking us, this is like a bit a moderately also difficult question, which is asking us to link the relationship of the relationship that we find between this part and the ossicles 1, 2, and 3, as well as the oval window. All right. So what happens here is that sound vibrations are actually being transmitted from this large membrane, which you call the tympanic membrane, and they are transmitted to a small oval window. So from a large tympanic membrane to the small oval window through our ossicles, ossicle 1, ossicle 2, and ossicle 3. Right, so through the ossicles. Right. And also we need to note that these ossicles are actually arranged from, according to size, from largest to smallest. All right? And the fact that they are arranged from largest to smallest, and they are the sound vibrations are also coming from a larger membrane, and they are transmitted through a smaller oval window, which we find here. It means that the vibrations are going to be concentrated, right? And they are therefore going to be amplified by virtue of being concentrated. Then they are also going to be amplified. So it's from a large tympanic membrane to a small oval window through the ossicles, thus concentrating the vibrations and amplifying them. So now let's answer question 2. Let's use blue. 2.4.4. All right, 2.4.4 we are describing. So we're going to start by saying the sound waves. All right, the sound waves are transmitted. Sound vibrations. The sound vibrations is the middle ear, so it's vibrations are transmitted from the large tympanic membrane to the small, from large to small, to the small oval window. To the small oval window through, right? This is done through the ossicles. All right, our 3 little bones. And these ossicles are arranged, right? So these ossicles are arranged from largest, which is the hammer, from largest to smallest, which is the stirrup, to smallest. All right. So this, because of this, the vibrations are concentrated. So this has got a tendency of concentrating. So this concentrates the vibrations. and amplify them, right? And amplify them. Okay, so the vibrations will be concentrated and amplified as they move out of the oval window. Right, so that's our question 2.4.4. Now let us move on to question 2.4.5. Right, question 2.4.5 is asking us to describe, right? Describe the role of semicircular canals in the maintenance of balance. Right. So this one requires us to answer this question step by step. All right, step by step. And we're going to start with the stimulus. When we answer this question, we'll start with, I'm just going to write it here in blue. We're going to start with the stimulus. All right, because we are talking about semicircular canals, the stimulus will be the change in speed or direction. So we're going to start with the stimulus, and this stimulus is going to be converted into an impulse, a nerve impulse. All right, and then from an impulse, all right, we're going to have this impulse being transmitted to the cerebrum. It's going to be transmitted to the, no, it's not cerebrum, it's the cerebellum. Cerebellum. We're talking about maintenance of balance, so it is the cerebellum. Okay, for interpretation, and this cerebellum is also going to send another impulse, or it's going to generate another impulse that it would send to the muscles. You can just say to the muscles, but in particular, it is the skeletal muscles. And so that balance is restored, and it's for 4 marks. It is for 4 marks. So things must be sequential when we answer this question. So let's answer question 2 point. Right, 2 point. Sorry. We need a blue pen. So it's 2.4.5. 2.4.5, like I said, is going to start with the stimulus, all right? And the stimulus can be change in speed or direction of movement. So we're going to start by saying a change in speed or direction. This is the stimulus, right? Change in direction or speed of movement, right? Of movement, right, is going to stimulate. So a change in the speed or direction of movement stimulates that receptor that we find in the not cochlea this time, that we find in the semicircular canals. So inside the semicircular canals, we find a receptor, and this receptor is called crista when it's one, and they are called cristae when they are many. So we are going to say a change in speed or direction of movement stimulates cristae. There are many. Stimulates cristae, and these cristae are found in the semicircular canals. When these crystalli are stimulated, they convert the stimulus into an impulse. So this stimulus, all right, this stimulus is converted to a nerve impulse or to an impulse by the crystal. It is actually the crystal that is converting the stimulus into an impulse. Now, the impulse is then transmitted to the cerebellum. It's the cerebellum. Let's not make a mistake here. So the generated impulse is going to be, so the impulse is transmitted to the I'm going to write it in capital letters, cerebellum. Okay, cerebellum, right? The second largest part of the brain is the one that is responsible for maintaining balance. How is this impulse transmitted to the cerebellum? It is through the auditory nerve. Through the auditory nerve. Right? And then what happens next? When the cerebellum gets this impulse, right, it is going to interpret the impulse, right? And then after interpreting the impulse, the cerebellum is going to send a nerve, or it generates a nerve impulse, which it then sends to the muscles or to the skeletal muscles. Right, so we're going to say then the cerebellum, after interpreting, the cerebellum sends an impulse to the muscles, and these muscles are the skeletal muscles, right? To the muscles, right? Why is the cerebellum sending an impulse to the muscles? Is to restore balance. Right, to restore balance. Now, let us look at how the examiner at the marking center at the end of the year would have marked this question. Right, question 2.4.1a. Correct the spelling here. Transmit the sound waves. So the first question, the examiner would remember it was for 1 mark. The examiner was looking for just one function, so it is 1 mark, and the 1 mark is on tympanic membrane. All right, that's your 1 mark. And then part B, the answer is equalizes pressure on either side of the tympanic membrane, and the answer is also on tympanic membrane. Please note, for the first question, part A, you could have said it also secretes wax, the auditory canal. Besides transmitting sound waves to the tympanic membrane, it also secretes wax or cerumen. You could have said that. But here, since we were like trying to follow the instructions, I just wrote 1 there so that you know that you are only supposed to give 1 function, but it has another function. the auditory canal has another function, that one of secreting cerumen or earwax. All right, so we move on to question part C, question 2.4.1 part C. This one is about F. F releases pressure from the inner ear, and then we have our 1 mark here. So altogether our question 4.1 is 3 marks. We move on to question 4.2. The examiner is asking for the letter only. Letter only. So we are going to credit the letter only. Here, if you write the name of the structure or name of the part of the ear that is represented by say the function that we are given here, or that matches with the function that we are given here, you wouldn't get the marks, because the examiner is asking for the letter. So the part that transmits sound waves in form of pressure waves, we saw that it is C, the cochlea, right? So we want the letter, so it is C. The part that transmits sound waves in form of impulses, we've seen that it is this auditory nerve, which is part D. We are writing the letter only, so the examiner will credit the letter only. So 2.4.2 is 2 marks. Right, we move on to 2.4.3. This one was asking us to explain what would happen if receptors in region C, which is our cochlea, are damaged, right? So the expected answer was you were expected to say the receptor cannot convert stimuli into impulses. So the credit is here, or the mark is here, right? So if an impulse cannot be produced from the stimulus, it means that no impulse is going to be transmitted to the cerebrum, the brain, right? It is very important for us to note that here we are talking about the brain, cerebrum, and we are talking about impulses, right? Let's make sure that we use the correct term. We don't say message. When we are talking about impulses, we don't have to say messages. The correct term to use would be impulse. And also transmitted to some people would just say to the brain. We need to specify which part of the brain, and that part of the brain is the cerebrum. So no impulses will be transmitted to the cerebrum, right? That is where the other mark is. So then we move on. If no impulse has been transmitted to the cerebrum, it means this person is not going to hear anything. All right, so that's our 3 marks for question 2.4.3. So that's 3 marks. All right, then we move on to question 2.4.4. Question 2.4.4 was asking us, or is asking us, to describe, right, how the parts of the middle ear, including the membranes, assist in amplifying sound. So here we were expected to say sound vibrations are transmitted from a large tympanic membrane. That's a marking point, right? So we give you a tick, we credit a tick on tympanic membrane. To a small oval window, right? That's another mark, right? And how is this done? It is done through the ossicles, right? How are these ossicles adapted to perform this function? They are arranged from the largest to the smallest. That's another tick, right? We need to note that this question was worth 3 marks. So the examiner will credit the first 3. So 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to remove the last one. So we have reached the maximum there. So we would write a 3 here, and then we say max when we are at the examination center. All right, because it was 3 marks, right? And then question 2.4.5, it is asking for the process of maintaining balance presented, logically, right? So it starts with the stimulus change in, so we have our change in speed or direction of movement. That's our marking point, right? Then what does this one do, this change? It stimulates the crystal, right? And when the crystal is stimulated, what does it do? It converts the stimulus into an impulse, right? This question is 4 marks, right? So we continue marking, right? The impulse is then, right? So that generated impulse is then transmitted through the cerebellum. The cerebellum, that's a marking point. So it is worth 4 marks. So the examiner would stop marking here and say max. Give you your 4 marks here, and then it says max there. Let's just go back to the previous slide so that we see how many marks we got there. All right, so we have 8 marks, 6, that's 6 plus 2, that's our 8 marks. 8 plus 3, that's our 11, plus 4, that's our 15 marks. So this is how we would get our 15 marks for this question. There you have it, a moderately difficult question on the human ear. If you found this video helpful, give it a like, share it with your colleagues, comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you all in the next video. Bye.